Hi again. The next book in the martial arts series I'm going to talk about is a book which traces the history of karate in Liverpool, or Shotokan karate in Liverpool, and really is parallel or mirrors the growth of the martial arts in general in the United Kingdom. And it's this book, The Liverpool Red Triangle Karate Club by Dr. Clive Layton. Now, Clive Layton had access to the archives of the BKF, the British Karate Federation, which was the original governing body in the country. And he had all the membership registrations, correspondence, all this kind of thing. And also, he's been able to interview a lot of the figures that were around at that time. And it's a fascinating story because, as I said, it mirrors how the martial arts, judo, for example, jiu-jitsu, was being practiced in drafty halls with rough wooden floors that gave you splinters in your bare feet, no changing facilities, and so on. And in Liverpool, the guys were training at a place called Harold House, and they were also that was at weekends, and then midweek they were training in a place called Pirrie Labour Club in Norris Green by Broadway, which I can actually see from the window of our present gym where we train, the gutter fighters. And the funny thing is that I was friends with guys who were in a band, a group, Merseybeat group, and they used to rehearse next to the Pirrie Labour Club in the British Legion Club on the same night these guys were training. And one night I remember looking through, I heard some of the key eyes, and I looked through the window and I saw them. And I knew enough about the martial arts to know what they were doing. They were doing karate. And years later, or not that long later, when I actually started, I was talking to some of the guys, and they'd remembered being annoyed by the noise of the band practicing. It used to disturb them. So I first encountered the group really. I'd taken up judo again, and I was doing it where I worked in Prescott, basically in the place where we first did the gutter fighters. And one day a chap came in, and it was Frank Vernon. He lived in Prescott, and he put a poster up about a demonstration of karate coming up the following week. Anyway, I rushed over to him because I'd walked the length and breadth of Liverpool trying to find where you could train. I'd gone back to the Pirrie Club, but they were no longer there. And people would tell me, oh, yeah, they do it here, there, and everywhere. And I'd walk along and find places. And one of the places I went to was the Alpha Jiu-Jitsu Club, Jack Britton's place in Shield Road. And I talked to him, and he readily admitted he taught jiu-jitsu. And he was a great old character, and I wish I'd talked to him a bit more. Anyway, I went along to the St. George's Hall demonstration, and it was fantastic. It was amazing. It was still one of the best demonstrations of martial arts I've ever seen, because you had these four top instructors. I think it went on for over an hour. And in more recent times, they would demonstrate one kata or one little self-defense move or something like that. But then they were really trying to showcase it and spread Shotokan all over the world. And it was Masters Kase, Kanazawa, Inoue, and Shirai. And so I went along to the Red Triangle. That was the Friday night, I think, and Saturday I went to the Red Triangle. Got the address off Frank and enrolled, which was quite a difficult process. You had to fill in a form, which is like adopting a kid, and sign an oath and promise never ever to divulge this material to anyone else. Unfortunately, I've broken that oath over the years. I've taught people. So, and it was quite expensive. It was about £5 to join then in 1965, which was quite a lot of money. And then and you couldn't just join. You went on a waiting list. Anyway, I got a letter and I went along there. And one of the first people I met was Terry Astley, and he's in this book. He was the club secretary at the time, who barked at me for not bowing. And because I was wearing a judo gi, he said, "You should know better to bow." Well, judo was very informal and didn't really do that. So that was my introduction. And one of the chaps there was Terry O'Neill. And I recognised him because I used to go to the cavern. And the next time I went to the cavern, I introduced myself to him and started talking to him. And that was the start of a wonderful friendship. So a lot of the stuff in the book strikes chords with me and memories with me. I was I was there for a very short time, really, in the history of the place. It'd been going for a few years before I turned up. I can remember Bobby Poynton coming along to train, and we became friends, and we were the same grades. We went through the same grades together, and we trained together. Particularly when Anoda Sensei became resident in Liverpool, and the training became very, very hard. Not brutal or anything excessive. It was just hard training, and some people didn't like it. Now, previous to Anoda Sensei, they'd had a Japanese instructor called Tatsuji Murakami, who, by all accounts, was absolutely brutal. And there's a lot about him in the book, which is quite hair-raising. But some of the stuff I heard firsthand, people like Terry told me that he was an absolute nightmare to train with. The other thing back then, in those early days before Kanazawa Sensei and then Anoda Sensei came, was it was a little bit of the blind leading the blind. You know, the seniors would go down to London and train, then come back and teach what they'd learned, and it would just basically be one block or something. So the guys would practice this one block over and over and over again. Consequently, they became very, very good at the fundamentals, which is really what it's all about. And this is one of the reasons why the Red Triangle became the top club, particularly in Shotokan system, in the country for many, many years. Coupled with having an Sensei resident there for over a year. And it was his shop window place. And the training he gave at the Red Triangle was harder than he gave anywhere else. And he wanted the guys to be really good. So a lot of people left at the time, but Bobby Poynton and I loved it. And we both trained 6 days a week, 2 sessions a day. And Oda Sensei told us there was 2 classes back to back. There was a white belts class, then a colour belts class. And even though we were white belts, he told us to join the colour belts class because we were keen. And I used to go there straight from work and do the 2 classes and then go home and have my tea, have my dinner. And that was normal, 6 days a week. And I remember Steve Cattle turning up. He was the same grade as me at the time. We were either greens or browns, I can't remember. He'd come over from York, and he was training to be a teacher, and he'd enrolled in the CF Mott Teacher Training College, and deliberately chose Liverpool so he could train at the Red Triangle, which shows how committed he was. And Steve eventually became British karate champion, and had a fantastic international career. I remember Andy and Joe, who were the 2 seniors, getting their black belt. That was a big step. And then we all entered a competition in 1966. A team of us went down to Crystal Palace and we competed. And the book ends not long after that phase. I believe there's going to be a second volume to this book. For me, it was a really great trip down memory lane. And for anybody who's doing karate, particularly Shotokan, and wants to know the foundations of it all, how the BKF, the British Karate Federation, became the KUGB, the Karate Union of Great Britain. The word union was chosen by Frank because he was a trade union activist. And I was at the meeting in Manchester in Deansgate when it was set up. We broke away from Mr. Vernon Bell ran the BKF, and he was the guy who made you sign an oath and all this. He was, must say, a bit of a strange individual, but credit where it's due, he was the guy who got the whole thing off the ground. Another story in the book I must mention is the first international when the guys all went over to France. Andy was on the team. Terry Wingrove from London, who was in Japan at the same time. He was long-term resident of Japan. We linked up when I was over there. Great guy. And Brian Hammond, who I worked with on the Miss World contest, he was on the team. And they just got battered by the French, who were been doing a lot of competitions. And it's not in the book, but I was told that Andy came back to the UK with his teeth in his pocket to go to the dentist rather than reattached. So it was brutal times in the competition. And the great stories in the book, great memories. It's not like that now. It's much more organized, much more disciplined, much more progressive now. Very high standard of training. But for me, it was a great book to take me back.